Right. The when I originally approached Groco, which is actually Gross Mechanical Laboratories, and asked would they speak on some of their new, or I might refer to as better mousetrap products. They said certainly. They'd be glad to attend and participate. And then in the vagaries of fate, they became overwhelmed with their workload. And they said, we can't do it. Unfortunately, we really want to help, but we can't do it. I said, well, if you don't mind, here are some products that I really think this is something that marine surveyors globally ought to see, because there are situations afoot that will require their knowledge of some of this type of equipment. And he said, certainly, however we can cooperate, and they have been great. And it turns out that their operation is in the same little village on the same island where we reside, where our office is. And so they moved some equipment in. Groco Corporation, Groco has been around since 1918. And I think their original claim to fame before they became involved in a very significant foundry and maritime work was to develop the first automobile tail light. And in 1918, I suppose you needed tail lights to get automobile insurance. But that's how far they go back. And this is a third generation. This is the grandson, Dan, on Don Gross, who runs Groco. And they are a family group, and they are unabashedly unashamed that their product is perhaps 5 times more expensive than their competition. And they don't consider they have competition. It's all they can build, all they can do every day. So they're doing something right. And some of those things they're doing right, I'm not here to endorse Groco as a product, but the concept of what they're putting out as an idea that we as surveyor have not seen. I certainly have not seen some of it. And we perhaps need to know so we don't find ourselves in that rather embarrassing position when the consumer asks, what is that? And the surveyor goes, I don't know. We don't want to be there. And we're going to see these items, they're enforced now. Some major manufacturers are using them. So we will be running across them. And with that, am I on screen?
Yes, but we'll need to get people, if you haven't done it, we just need to, you need to pin James's screen. So if you hover over his little button, the 3 little bars as you did earlier, if you right mouse click, then you can click the pin, and then you'll bring James in big image into your screen, as I have done now. I can see you large and clear. I hope everyone else can too.
All right. How do I see myself live? Full size.
That's a good question. I don't know, James. We're all seeing you.
Oh, the 3 dots. Maybe that's it.
And pin.
There I am.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Well, we know, and we've just heard about tier level 3 and tier level 4 and IAPP, and I think everyone who was listening to Todd said, these rules apply to 130 kW propulsion. I mean, that's not very much, but they do. And with pollution controls being what they are, and the IMO being what it is, and the rules necessary as they are, with increased horsepower and modulation of exhaust comes increased heat. And increased heat means better modulation of water flow to the coolant apparatus, whether it be the oil coolers or the transmission coolers, or what may very well be the sulfur coolers or catalytic converters. And how do we do that with normal piping, with normal water pumping? Well, I'm going to have a living example here of a Far Eastern boat that was built, that was brought to the US, that worked just fine, modern propulsion, and the decision was made. They lost a riser, not a riser, turbo cooler, elbow. Well, that failed. Let's change the system on the cooling system on board on that starboard motor. Well, after several attempts, everything was plugged up. They decided that go for a sea trial. I was on the sea trial. to measure, to do thermal measuring, and which, by the way, I believe almost everybody in the room has one of these, a thermal camera, and I'm sure everyone has one of these, all right? The first one of these I purchased in the mid-90s was $700. This one was $39. $20,000 when they came out, this is $700. So the tools that we need for our jobs are well within the scope of our ability to purchase them. The short story gets to be that when the boat was built, it was built with the normal apparatus and pumping that came from the manufacturer. And when the new pumping was installed, somebody went to the hardware store, marine supply shop, and said, I need an 1.5 inch pipe nipple. And they were sold an 1.5 inch ID pipe nipple, right? That's right. And the flats are 2 inches. They are 2 inches. However, what should have come with the pump was an 1.5 inch pipe nipple, just like this one. However, the interior of a proper pipe nipple is not reduced. This is what they installed, and that's what it should have had. All right, same size, same specification, one made by one manufacturer, rough and unpolished and narrow, and one made by a company named Groco, buffed on the inside and of the correct diameter all the way through. Because if there's a restriction anywhere in the system, there's a restriction everywhere in the system. This has to be one block. So I'm starting there because let's make it easy. The Chesapeake Bay, the east coast of the United States, marine growth is getting far, far more plentiful. Good for those estuaries and waterways. So hold this up and no one's going to believe it. Well, many will not. This is a seawater pickup grate requested by a large United States manufacturer of yachts. Not much there, but that's what they wanted to keep the large trash out. Well, what happens to all the seaweed that gets run up in the motor? Good question, right? It's going to get to the seawater pump and trumpet it, clog the seawater pump, clog the heat exchangers, jam up the oil coolers first. Well, I hope this is going to work. This is a strainer. It's about 39 inches, meter tall, from a large motor yacht. The base of which, that white thing down there, is a big brother version. And by the way, that is only a 4-inch valve. They come in 6-inch valves, and we didn't have anybody strong enough or floor strong enough to support it. So what they have now is you've got this very open grate coming in that allow large stuff to pass, going through well-sized tubing through a strainer. Doesn't look like much as a strainer, but this is the body of the strainer. This is an exit port for the macerator pump that if the strainer becomes clogged and the water flow is measured by a device, well, similar to this, also straight through, and measured by a paddle wheel here that tells you not what the flow rate is per gallon per minute or second, but what the flow rate is in volume as compared to a declared value that you establish. So the first question I had in my head is, when the macerator chews up the seaweed, it destroys the plastic bag, it keeps the engine from overheating, where did it all go? And that's where it goes, out that hole, this exit port, so it blows the waste overboard out of a separate through hole. exit through the side of the hull. So you're not leaving the residual in the engine. So this is an innovation, maybe overdue, don't know, but the critical nature of not being able to allow tier 4 engines to get to that point of critical mass is going to require some extra effort, and this is one of those efforts, one of many. These things are made in bronze, lead-free, stainless, and I'm going to do something that I think almost any technician out there is going to say, Captain Renn, you're making a mistake, because I know where this was built. There's the threads inside this through hole, which, by the way, has a lock on it. And a port, or if you want to lock this thing closed, you swing in the closed position, drop the lock on the pole, put a lock in it, or a lockout tab at least, and then you've locked out that valve. But because all the finished components at Groco are hand fitted and hand finished to the last degree, I can do this inside these threads without worrying about bleeding, because there's no sharp edges. It's a different sort of thing. Polished. No casting in the curve of the street L. We're gonna love this. All the seacocks come with Zerk fittings, so they can be lubricated. Not an endorsement, an idea perhaps past its time. Well, moving along, and what the surveyor maybe ought to be specking out, this is a domestic freshwater pump. Well-known manufacturer. Inside this housing, as most of us know, there's a cam, a roller cam, and 4 diaphragms. The motor is exposed to the seawater. Sometimes not a great idea. The belt drive, domestic water pump with a crankshaft and a diaphragm. You've all seen them, and probably most of us have repaired them. Wonderful item, great idea. I'll ask for a show of hands later. Do we know what this is? I can tell you what it is. It's similar to a Wankel engine, and that's the seawater impeller. At no point does the impeller actually touch the housing. It's on an eccentric. There is no loading on the shafting. And should the seal go bad, which it will, you can take it apart with one hand. Very low noise, almost no maintenance. Attached to this arrangement, actually it should be the way around. This is heavy, by the way. We go on boats and we say, water pump. Yes, it ran. No, it didn't. But because it ran doesn't mean it worked. Again, the same pump I showed you, the Wankel type pump with a luxury coupling, substantial motor, that's all right, that's selling a product. But the features it does have domestic water pumps, if you're speccing out a refit, domestic water pumps will run until they burn themselves up. There is no safety to turn themselves off for no pressure. In this particular case, there is a safety that turns it off for running too long, more than 10 minutes at a time, by which time the accumulator tank should have built pressure, or running without water. It will not allow itself to burn itself up by running without water. Features and benefits, but something to spec in the next refit. What's that? This is moving along fairly well. Another feature. Tells you what the water flow is. We might like to know if your air conditioner has water flow, which is going to take us to our next step, and I'm moving right along really quickly. Oops. Inline fixture hooked up to an automatic winterization system. Are you ready?
Okay.
All right. What Groco has done, understanding that there are more systems than there used to be, and I think understanding that center consoles, which used to be 7 meters, can now be 15 meters easily. They carry not 20 gallons of bait, but maybe 50 gallons of bait. And the 27-degree dead rise in the bottom of the hull, it's almost impossible to get down and reach and turn the seacocks on and off. So we have a system wherein the connecting rods run 3 feet down in the bilge where a Smurf couldn't get. And that will work or it won't work. But even if it does, at 50 knots, make it easy, 30 knots, you're overpowering the drain capacity of your live wells or fish tank or whatever. So how do we overcome that? Manage the vessel and add some safety features to the saltwater management system on board. And over my shoulder, you're going to see eval from Groco, and I hope we're going to be able to pull this off.
This is good, Dave.
That does it.
Yeah, all right.
This is a valve management system and GPS and high water alarm system and selective safety systems from Groco. This will not allow you to start your generator if the seacock's not open. It won't allow the air conditioner to come on if the seacock's not open. You can change the percentage of flow in your seacocks to your water management or turn your deck wash down, your anchor cleaning, any of those saltwater systems from your cell phone if you wish. And it will tell you what valve's open, what valve's closed, where it is, how much it's open, how much it's closed. So we're going to close all the valves. Before anybody asks, what happens if it fails? You take this little plastic wrench out, reach in and close the valve manually. Right? What we got here? I gotta unplug this again.
No, you're good. Do the eval. Yeah.
There you go. There's your boat. You can change what style of boat you would like to have. You can add almost as many boats as you want, you'd like. We can turn on the GPS if you want. Let's see. All right.
On the right hand side.
Right hand side.
Go to him.
Huh?
Charts right here on the right hand side above.
Compass.
Yeah. You go there.
Have GPS. Type of boat it is. There we go. Any number of settings. And waypoints. All right. So, in one instrument or set of instruments, you've protected your generator, you've protected your air conditioning, you've run half a dozen through hulls, and you've done it all from the helm or from your cell phone. It is infinitely expandable. It runs off its own CAN bus situation and does not affect the other navionics aboard. And that's what I wanted to show you. Next time you go on a boat and you see this, you'll at least know what it is. Any questions I can answer?
Got to say, James, they say never work with animals and children and do live demos like that, but it was super cool. That was.
Right. Well, I just wanted to, I had not seen this. I calculated other surveyors hadn't seen it. And it's just, I'm terrified of the day when Mrs. Van Pelt says, "What's that?" And it's not being an expert if you don't know the answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Randy, John Pepe.
Hey, John.
What are the cost of these valves?
Like the
The
four
electric valves,
the valve.
the E-valve.
Okay. The valves are about $6,000.
Per each?
Yes. For each system, each two module system. Yes.
Oh, okay.
And you know, we're not talking about yours, the last picture or whatever it was, but a 40-foot outrage, you know, with 400 horsepower outboards, another $25,000 for valves doesn't mean very much. It's just another option.
True.
Now the 4-inch large valve with macerator intact, as you saw it, which by the way, the motor is AC 120, but the controls are all 24 volt, as was the water pump. The valves here, which go from 1 inch, the standard 1-inch ball valve, up to 5 inch, which is substantial, in my opinion, valve. They run that range and they're priced accordingly for that. But if it's a 5-inch valve, it'd be difficult to imagine you can't get to it. And on those notes, as I showed you on the water flow, someone's going to ask you, we're going to ask one of us, some of us, what was the exhaust back pressure on that Azimuth 121 you took out with the Tier 4 motors? Halyard makes a wonderful little cardboard card for doing the calculation between kilopascals and pounds per square inch, whatever combination you intend to use when you do your measurement. I know we all used to use manometers. I think that those days is pretty much over. And I don't think anyone's using a power stick anymore, although we might be. But those are figures we're going to have to have a knowledge of and how to work through, I think, as surveyors, no matter what stripe you're wearing. And Lloyd's going to talk something about that tomorrow, Lloyd Griffin, on the rather dreadful ramifications of trying to modify yacht production for Tier 4 power with proper EPA control or IMO control for exhaust in the U.S. It's quite a dilemma. But this valve is 10 grand at the 4-inch level.